This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results.
It's no different than being a professional baseball player. You can't be a one-trick pony. You have to be a 5-tool player in order to succeed in this game.
This is the Power Producers Podcast, production redefined. Are you ready to feel the power?
Hey everybody, welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. I got to tell you, I don't get pumped up for too many episodes, but these next several, we've got some freaking legends coming on the show, and this man today is no exception. Mr. Jerry Conrey from out west couldn't be further away from me, but I feel like we're kindred spirits. So happy to have you on the show today, Jerry.
Well, Dave, I have to tell you, Dave, this is my very first podcast. So
that's awesome.
Nice.
I'm a virgin at 57. So, treat me gently.
Listen, it's that's actually kind of what my mission is. I want the people who are not always heard from in the industry to let their voice be heard on a platform that'll go out and let people see just exactly why they're as successful as what they are. So to hear that means that I've accomplished my mission. Now, the second part of that is giving them some useful stuff that will help them. But why don't you, you've been doing this for a long time. You bring so much to the table that I know that I'm personally going to be able to learn and take things from this conversation. But why don't you set the table and let everybody just sort of give them your background and how you got to where you're at today, and then a little bit about the agency, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So this is my 33rd year in the business. I started as a little farmer's agent in Orange County, California, and from there made the mistake of entering management with farmers and became a district manager and managed about 45 agencies, about a $50 million book at the time, which in 95 to 2000 was a pretty significant number. And then in 2000, they started to decide that they were going to go into financial services and they were going to put the burden on the district managers. And if you know me well, you know that I'm not one to bite my tongue. I'll confront issues. And I think it's for the better. I think that the entire world sometimes lacks folks who will confront problems, but do it in a positive way, not a negative way. I don't confront negatively, I confront positively. But I confronted the issue. It put me as a target, and farmers and I parted ways. Because at 32 years old, at 37 years old, I wasn't going to be miserable for the rest of my career. And I used the contract value of that to buy a little agency that was 75% personal lines and 25% commercial. But the commercial had all the right markets. And that was in Tustin, California back in 2002, first day of 2002. And since then, we've taken that little agency that generated about $700,000 in revenue to just under $3 million this year, and the agency is now 65% commercial, 35% personal lines.
Good deal. And you're not playing around with small accounts either. You've got some big stuff that you're working on, which is interesting to me, because that's what stimulates our mind. I've never met an account that I'm not willing to attempt to work on, but I also understand that some of those I am going to hand off to somebody who's far more qualified. How have you approached making yourself better over the years? Do you have CIC, CRM, and all of that stuff? I'm just interested to know, because we were talking about a pretty unique scenario before we started recording. And I mean, there's a lot of people that couldn't carry that conversation.
Yes, well, we could talk about that. No, I don't have a CIC. In fact, all of my producers have to have one. And so don't do as I say, or don't do as I do as I say kind of mentality. But the reality is that I understand the value of it. I went old school in my learning. I went to real insurance school. Okay, they hardly even have it anymore. And when I did that, I was taught insurance from forms. We read forms, and then we read definitions, and we understood things, and we didn't learn insurance by selling it and then finding out what it does and doesn't do. We actually, learned the insurance long before we walked into the door and sold something to someone. And, this is the old Aetna program. Aetna used to be a player in the day in the 80s. And I went through that Aetna training and then farmers training on before that. And between those two things, I learned how to basically represent commercial risk on a generalist basis. And as you do that, and as you grow clientele, and as you grow in the risks associated with those things, you have to remain open-minded and learning as you go. And I don't have any arrogance in me built in. I recognize what I don't know, and because of that, I think that I've always been a student, and I still am.
It's funny, man. I think one of the hardest things for any of us to do is walk away from accounts or admit that we have a weakness somewhere. And I've never really been somebody who's had a problem doing that. I'm pretty self-aware for the most part. I know what I'm good at, and it's honestly the truth that if it's something I'm not good at, it doesn't even make it into the pipeline. I won't prospect it, because why would I put myself into that position? But I see it. I talk to commercial agents all over the country every week, and guys, you got to learn to walk away. You don't have to write every single account. You don't have to prospect every single account that comes across your desk. I realize that we have revenue pressure, but sometimes we spend so much time writing the wrong thing that we lose money on that account, and we trip over accounts that would have made us a lot on the way just to try and do that. And so, it's interesting to hear that you did it the old way. I did it the old way. I mean, I went to insurance school, like just even pre-licensing in Florida is brutal. It's 200 hours before you can sit for the test. And that was 5 40-hour weeks of listening in class, in person, which I absorbed it like a sponge because I had no background or experience in it. And I'm thinking, and all I had ever heard was, 70% of the people don't pass the test the first time. You know?
But you also have an insane memory, like insane memory.
Yeah, I do to a certain degree. So I gobbled all of that up, and then I did. I immediately went out and got my CIC because I wanted to level the playing field as quickly as I could. I think the other issue that a lot of producers have is they feel like there's a way to just download experience. That doesn't happen, man. There's no USB cord that you can plug into the side of your neck and then into the wall and download 5 years of experience, 10 years of experience. You got to go out and get your rear end kicked a few times and also win a few times in order to really learn the industry and how you craft your own value proposition and how you represent yourself at the point of sale. But one of the things that Jerry said to me one time, he and I were talking, that I still remember this and I laugh at it. We were talking about doing experience modification analysis and using software to do it. And his comment was, I can still do it with a paper and pencil. I don't need any kind of software to tell me how to audit an experience mod. And I don't know that you get any more, old school than that right there.
Well, let me just talk to that for a minute. A lot of people, they know how to answer a question in a system, but if you don't understand the machinations behind the system, to me, I will use that software just to validate what I've already done myself mathematically. But the other part of it is that it usually produces something pretty, to present. That's what you're paying for, is the thing you're going to give the client. But those people out there that pretend that they're insurance experts, they pretend they're risk managers, and they go out there and they bring in these pre-made packets, and they go to I don't know, Zywave or something, and download something, and then they try to sound intelligent. What worries me about them more than anything is that you don't learn anything in the course of engaging a client by talking. You only learn by listening. And you'd never learn by telling. You only learn by asking. And so if there's something that you're going to take out of this conversation with me today, I'm going to say this, David. I haven't heard any of your other pods, so I don't know whether anybody's ever advocated this before or not. But here's the Jerry Conreyism right now for today. The sale is made in the process of going through the underwriting. Okay, the sale is made in the fact finding. And so, and you tell me that isn't true to you too. You know.
No, I agree completely. And I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're selling a risk management value proposition or you're selling an insurance understanding and experience value proposition. You have to go through that portion of the process to be able to articulate what the solution is going to be for that person. And you're 100% right, man. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people that I hear just vomiting insurance speak to somebody who really has no clue what's even being explained to them. It's not being explained. It's just being regurgitated, when really you can ask open-ended questions, sit back with a legal pad and a pen, and you're going to get that information. And, you know, one of the things that I've found over the course, you know, I'm going on 20 years now, so I'm not quite at your level of experience, but I'm there. 2 decades is a long time to devote your life to anything. And, you know, I've gotten much better at that piece of it, of just saying, hey, why don't you tell me about this? And that's it. They're going to tell you. Now, you have to set the table depending on what your comfort level or that person's comfort level is with you when you get in front of them. I joke most of the time and say, look, obviously I'm not an attorney, but I, can play one today. And what I mean by that is this conversation, you have attorney-client privilege. I'm not going to say anything to anybody else outside this room, but if you want me to help you, you have to be upfront with me. There can't be secrets. And if you don't feel comfortable in that kind of a relationship, my firm's probably not going to be the one to represent you, because I can't go out and represent you without knowing where the bodies are buried.
Yeah. And the bottom, be careful about that attorney-client privilege. It's like that, but what you want to really say, and you want to say it right, which is that the canons of ethics in our industry are that everything that you tell us is 100% kept in complete confidence, and that we would be subject to not only lawsuits from you, but the loss of our license and our entire livelihood if we were to violate that. We will communicate what needs to be communicated to the marketplace in order to properly represent you. But everything that's communicated is going to be done through encryption and proper process. And whoever it is shared with can only be using it for the purpose of underwriting your risk and for your benefit. So that is the right way to say that, just so that we don't say the wrong thing. That we're not attorneys, and we get ourselves in trouble when we try to equate ourselves to them, even though they call me and ask me advice constantly.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, typically I'll say something like, I didn't stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night. I didn't graduate law school.
There you go.
I want to get into some of the stuff that you guys are doing in the community, because that was originally what led this podcast to happen. But before we do that,
okay,
anytime I've got a guy that's got as much experience as you do, I know how many wild things I've seen over the course of my career. I always want to ask guys like you, what's the craziest account, situation, whatever, that you've had to deal with over the course of your time in the industry?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a great claims scenario. How's that?
That works.
Perfect.
It was 2005, and Written Through Liberty Mutual was a manufacturer of bars and cookies and confections. They had a product that was stamped and marked as kosher, which is a very important thing to a large community. even beyond the Jewish community, it's important to some people that just want certain healthiness associated with the kosher mark. And this manufacturer is large enough that a day's run at that time in 2005 would be worth between $700,000 and $800,000, okay, in product. And they had purchased glycerin from a new supplier who represented that the glycerin was kosher. And when the rabbi came in to certify, he's looking through the list of suppliers and he sees that this supplier is one that he's never heard of before. So he does a little bit of investigation and determines that, in fact, the product is not kosher, even though represented by the supplier that it was. And our client was told that it could not release the product because they manufacture for a national brand, that they could not release the product and that they needed to destroy the product. And that was a $780,000 circumstance. Well, they call me and they said, well, is this covered? And I said, well, let's see. If you had manufacturer's errors and omissions, it might be covered. But the question that we have to ask here is this bodily injury? No. So is it property damage? And that was the big question, was if it was property damage. And Jerry Conrey, in his case, not only got that claim paid by Liberty Mutual, and not only did they completely get reimbursed through the subrogation process after a 4-year period, but the actual special form that you read today was changed. The version changed after that loss because carriers did not want that kind of risk repeating itself. But we proved that that was subject to a special form loss because special form says only the excluded things, and it does not fit the exclusion. And at the time, it did have things that were related to the manufacturing, the product, the touching of it, and they thought that they had what they needed, except that the case law was only on the world of construction and not in the world of manufacturing, and it wasn't supported. The claim was paid, the client was made whole. I was a hero for a week until the renewal period came, and and all those things. I didn't earn any profitability bonus that year, but I to this day I still have that group as a client, and I just got done renewing. That's the case we were just talking about. So
no kidding.
Okay.
You know, the thing that comes to my mind when I hear that story is it sounds like your client dodged a major bullet by not losing shelf space or future earnings potential as a result of having to destroy that batch.
Well, just, to add misery to everything, there was $40,000 in storage fees associated with that. There was $18,000 in destruction fees associated with that. So not only did they have all of that, and I will tell you, the two men that own that company, one of them actually wept on the phone with me as he told me the story. And, it's moments like that. And this was a company at the time was doing 65, 70 million in sales. Today it's over 200. But the point was that this was a very successful man, had 800 or 900 employees. And yet who did he turn to and who was he looking for? And who was the person that needed to tell him what he needed to hear? And I didn't have anything to tell him at the time, because I'm looking at conventional wisdom, conventional knowledge. But what I told him, and what's really important, is that, you know what? You have every right to make a claim, and I have every right to advise you of the best attorney you could have for that purpose. And that's exactly what I did, is I put them in touch with the best property attorney I knew, and the attorney was successful, and ISO 18 months later changed the form.
The lesson that agents need to take from that is this. You're so worried about talking about getting attorneys and accountants as referral partners. There's times you actually need to know who the right person is to represent your client. And I mean, we had something similar, not similar to that. I have never dealt with anything like that. But I mean, we had one with, it was actually the one I was talking about before we got on. It was the egg laying facility up in the Carolinas, where we had snow come in and it accumulated rapidly. And then the next day it melted. It got up warm enough to where the snow melted and then immediately froze that night, and more snow came down and the roof collapsed on the 4 pillars that were holding the laying house up. And I was not happy. Zurich was the carrier at the time, and they wanted to come in, and they were, the issue that we ran into with this was the business income, because the market value of eggs changes so much that if you're not a financially stable company, you have some serious issues. This company was 100 and some million a year in sales. They were very frugal. They had plenty of reserves. They said, look, avian bird flu is happening right now. The price of eggs from the good parts of the country are through the roof. We want to let this thing ride because we don't want to get stuck in a situation where we're not settling the claim for what we should have based on the current market value that those eggs would have had if they went to market. And we put it off, and it ended up being, I think originally they said they wanted to settle the claim for $765,000. It ended up settling for like $2.2 million was what they got. But the reason why it happened is really what is important. As soon as I found out that the carrier was going to be adversarial in how they were adjusting this claim, I immediately went to the policy and saw that we had coverage for professional services revolving around the claim. And we had $50,000 sub limit, and we used every ounce of that, not a penny more, but we went right up to it, bringing in forensic accountants and everything else that we needed to in order to make sure that we had this thing as just adjusted as well as we could. But you're talking about probably a 2.5 year time period before that thing finally closed out and reached its ultimate resolution. I say that because if you don't know these things, I mean, look, policies are a lot of pages, and agents tend to flip through a good bit of them without understanding what's in them. Slow down sometime when you're looking for something to occupy yourself and actually read one. You'll be amazed at what you pick up, even as crazy as that sounds with a standard ISO form.
No question about it, and frankly, it is. I think it's actually quite revealing. And when you as the advocate, at least I would hope that every broker or agent out there is an advocate. With you as the advocate, it's really important that you be able to throw a rope to your customer and pull them to you. But so many agents out there push the rope. How effective is a rope that's pushed? It isn't, okay? So it's just this little thing that's squiggling around. But a rope that's taut and that you're pulling in one direction, it has the effect of moving both you and whatever is at the end of it. And what I'm trying to convey in that analogy is that it is important that you lead the conversation. And you don't necessarily lead by telling you. I lead by asking. And that is Jerry Conrey's secret sauce. Telling is not selling. Asking the right questions is what sells.
You know what's sad? You can say that 100 times and people are still not going to listen to it, which blows my mind, because we have people on here that are extremely successful, long careers in this industry, and they're telling you exactly what got them there, and yet people just let it go in one ear and out the other. Which is fine by me, because I love competing against those people.
Well, no, I mean, so I don't know of an industry that's more selfless than insurance, in that the most successful people in the business, and certainly I'm not one of those, I'm just successful. But the most successful people in this business will share their how. They'll write books on it. They'll define it for you right down to the penny. And I used to look at that and scratch my head and wonder, why would you give away your competitive advantage? And then I realized that was not the competitive advantage. You are the competitive advantage. And so how you take information and what you do with information and how you convey it and how you communicate, that is the secret sauce. That it doesn't matter if I laid it out absolutely perfectly. It would not be exactly the same, because it isn't me. And I don't want anybody to be me. I want everybody to be them. But I do want them to be the best version of them. Because when they are the best version of them, they are raising our industry. I was involved in a little Facebook communication about another podcast that's being done, and and a young agent from Texas being invited in as a member of the of one of the 10 people that was going to be interviewed in this podcast. And he was scratching his head saying he doesn't understand how he's adding value or what kind of value he could bring looking at all the other people that are in there. And I wrote him a personal message, although I realized at the end that it wasn't personal because I responded and I just reacted to it instead of sending it in a message like in my mind, I thought I had done. And what I had said to him was, look, man, it's the rookies in this industry that move it forward. It's the rookies in this industry that don't understand what they don't know. They are the ones that can't be told no because we think no because it hasn't been done before. They think, why not? And I love why not. Why not is so empowering. And so I learn a lot from new folks. And that's why as a principal, the perpetuation of my agency is all about the recruitment of the next layer of producers. And I spend more time doing that than I spend, being the rainmaker in this agency. And I love rainmaking, but that's how much more I love this industry, that I would spend more time developing the future. And that's what I'm doing right now.
I'm with you, man. I mean, as much as I like to go out and win and crush an account, I get as much or more satisfaction going out for an assist with one of my producers and watching them win. And not just that, but seeing the progression from the very first time we went on an appointment to what they've morphed into over time, and how I'm talking less and less and pretty much get to the point where I don't have to say anything in an appointment because they've become so comfortable with what it is. And, I guess some people can look at that and think that it sounds hokey or it sounds cliche, but those are the people that aren't genuine to begin with. If you're a genuine person and if your heart's in the right place, you're going to be willing to spend that time. I mean, I think about some of the people that I know that are the most successful in this industry. They'll take my call anytime I need help with anything. And so and that is what's formed me to be the way that I am. And I not that I'm, Mother Teresa of the insurance industry by a long stretch, but I mean, if there's anybody that needs help, I'm always making myself available. If you saw my calendar, probably 30% of my days are spent helping agents that have questions or want to talk strategy.
It's all calls. I looked at it today. It's calls, meeting this person, whatever. I'm just like, where's your lunch at? Like, you were back to back today.
You can be certain that I did not miss lunch.
Well, yeah, I know. I was just wondering where it slid in there. But I totally agree with you. When I was doing the office supplies and I was the assistant manager in the office, I had a team of anywhere between. Hold on,
were you the assistant manager or assistant to the
assistant
manager?
To the regional manager?
Okay.
But no, a team anywhere from 6 to 15 people, and I could go out and have a big day myself and close an account. But it was always a way better feeling at the end of the day if one of my newer guys came back with, 3 accounts and just absolutely crushed it. It was just, and that's the way it is. And I think that's true for not only this industry, but the people who are successful in what they do in different areas of the workforce. Those are qualities that they possess.
I think it's
all interested in my process, but what I do, David, is if I have a rookie, what we do is we have machinations that help us create opportunities for sales, right? And then when one populates, then what I do is I assign it to a new producer who has to spend quite a bit of time doing research on the risk and trying to figure out and anticipate the questions that the client might have to say. And they do that on their own. They don't get a chance to pre-counsel with me. Then we go out on the appointment in tandem, and I am introduced as the principal of the agency and the principal risk manager. And so my role is risk management and consulting. His role is brokering. And so everything related to the sale, to the policy, the underwriting, all the questions that is engaged with the client that focuses on that are asked by him. And what I do is I try to expose things that his or her, I don't have any hers right now, but I'm hoping to have a her. I potentially got one in my sights at the moment, but the 2 producers that I've been doing this with for the last couple of years, My process is that I will wait until the very end. And if a question hasn't been asked and answered, then I will, by the way, and ask it as we're walking out the door. And what I tell them in the car is, by the way, is your indication from me to you that you missed something. And I won't say anything in front of the customer that would undermine their confidence in him, because in the end, I want them going to him, not to me. The role is for me to transfer knowledge. And the way I transfer knowledge best is not through a textbook and a classroom, but experiential learning. And by me rolling out there, I know that they're not taking on a risk that we don't understand or that we're not going to get adequate premium on, because I'm actually one of the agents that cares when the premium's too low. I actually will tell the underwriter that. For God's sakes, if the renewal's at 36,000, you're coming at 22, you think there's something about this risk you don't understand? Do you really believe that there's a circumstance in the marketplace where they could be 55% off? I don't think so. Okay, not in the world of actuary. So when I see that kind of differential, then I like to dive deep. And one of the things that needs to be taught to all the young producers out there and anybody that's entering the world of property and casualty is focus on the endorsements. Okay, you want to look at the deck page. Well, the deck page better include the endorsements list, and you better learn what all those endorsements mean.
And hey, by the way, how about take that list off the deck page and check them in to make sure that they're all attached to the policy? How many times have you seen a deck page that's got a list or a quote, even probably more so with a quote, has a list of included forms and endorsements? And it's particularly true in E&S, right? You start getting into excess and surplus lines, you could have a list of forms and endorsements a mile long. How many producers out there actually ask that broker that's placing that for you to send you specimen copies of all of that stuff so that you can read it and understand it and know what your client is getting into, right? Kyle can tell you, I will ask for that 100% of the time.
Yeah,
and
we do.
That's one of the things I taught him early is, number one, look through this list. And if there's anything that gives you cause for concern based on titling, ask for it. But also, don't just assume because of the way that it's titled that you understand what the language is going to be. Get familiar with what some of these forms are. Now, if you place a lot of business with the same carrier in E&S, like if you've got a program like Admiral does nutraceuticals and some CBD, they're one of the few markets that do like that real specific niche that they're in. The forms are going to be the same on almost every single one of those. So you're going to understand these are included every single time. But then you realize, oh, wait a minute, I've never seen this one before. Why did they throw this in? And usually it's because there's an exposure there, right? And they don't want to be taking responsibility for it. So, ask for those things. That's a great point, and one that we don't talk about nearly enough.
It's true. Yep.
Yeah, we try to aggregate all of our E&S business through as few houses as we can, and utilizing the same underwriters as often as possible. And the benefit that comes from that is they learn our protocol, and our protocol is very, very simple. If it is not an ISO form, do not fail to send us a draft version or a copy or a specimen of the form, because we're going to ask for it anyways. And you might as well just get it, aggregate it, put it together, and send it to us. Now, if you've sent it to us before, we will have it in our folders, and we'll know what it says, and you won't have to send it again. But if it's never been sent before, we expect you to send it. And when you have that kind of relationship with your underwriter, whether it's an E&S underwriter or even a preferred carrier, bottom line is that you want them telling you what you need to know. And they better know their product better than you. They only have to know one product. We have to know everything. I had an underwriter one time at Farmers tell me, well, how come you don't understand this rule? And I walked her over and I said, can you show me your underwriting rules? And she pulled them out, and it was probably about, 30, 35 pages, right? Because what did she underwrite? She underwrote one thing, auto. And I walked her over and I said, I want you to see what we're responsible for. I said, this is property. This is auto. This is inland marine. This is crime. This is excess. I go, we're responsible for all of this. They go, we are out creating the relationships and the opportunities for you. Your job is not to be, Dr. No and figure out a way not to write something. Your job, your carrier didn't put you there to prevent business from being written. They want the right business written. So you need to educate me so that I can bring you the right business. And your attitude isn't going to get us there. Do you get that? And again, I turned it into a question, but the point is that when you do that, that question hits them in the right place. And what's the reply going to be? Well, of course I'm going to help you. And that's where we need to be. That's what, and so I've always enjoyed this kind of relationships.
It's funny, man, because we have two, maybe three wholesalers that we use for our E&S, and really for the bulk of it, unless it's something specialty, like we were talking about product recall and some other stuff, I wouldn't go to a generalist to place that. I would need somebody who really understands what that coverage does and be able to know that market. But by and large, we have a wholesaler for that we use for any kind of cyber and professional risk, along with management liability. And then we have the other wholesaler that's pretty much whatever the GL property, all of that other stuff. That's it in the entire agency. And I have worked with both of those people for over 15 years. The one lady wrote the very first policy I ever wrote when I got my insurance license.
Awesome.
And that's just, I mean, that we're in a relationship business, and that's talked about plenty. But I mean, it's true, man. I have a comfort level there. I get solicited, and I'm sure you do too. I get solicited by wholesalers all the time. No chance I'm leaving. No chance.
Dude, they call me to get to you.
Yeah. It's because I told them to call you.
And I always give them your cell.
That's great. Thank you for that. And I operate on Pacific time, so please call me at 8:00 Eastern. So listen, I want to get in before we wrap up. I want to get into the community involvement and the stuff that you've done and the conscious decision that you've made as an agency principal in a business in the community to make an impact. Why don't you talk a little bit about the community efforts that you guys have right now?
Well, we're on many fronts. First of all, it all starts with who you hire, right? You got to hire people that care. And so unusual to us is one of the things that I ask in an interview is, what kinds of things do you support and what are you into? And what do you do that's selfless? What interview question asks, what do you do that's selfless? But I want to understand what care looks like, because if you can't convey care, you're not going to be very successful in my agency, because that is the one thing we do is care. And I have to say that the majority of people out there don't, okay? Or at least they don't prove it through their actions. They may say they do, but they don't prove it through their actions. I care about what is said, how it's said, and how often it's said. Those things matter to me. And they come up in our management meetings and our one-on-one interviews all the time. Conrey Insurance Brokers, we support the things that our employees support. So we have matching dollar programs and things like that. But as an agency, our focus has been really right here, Southern California, Orange County, right where I'm at. We love anything related to children and anything related to disabilities and anything related to folks that are marginalized in any way. And because we can get behind those things, our heart gets into it. And then think about the array of clientele I've got, okay? And I am a generalist, by the way. You didn't ask that question, David, but I was hoping you would, because it's the one thing I wanted to make sure I said before we ended this conversation today. If I had it to do all over, I wouldn't be who I am today. I would be very, very different. And so I look at the guys at there's a wholesaler that does nothing but cyber business, okay? And I'm not going to mention them because I just, it's not their day today. We're not talking about them. But the point is that this young group of owners decided that they're going to know and own the market in cyber. They're going to help write new forms. They're going to go find new markets. They're going to educate the agents, and they're going to change the world of cyber because it is underrepresented. It was the stepchild management liability policy for years. I love that. I love that. Today, if I was 26 and entering the business for the first time, I would absolutely pick a niche and I would own it. And I would be the guy in that niche. To this day, I don't have a niche, and it's my greatest frustration because I don't. My days are not homogenized. You know, I can't anticipate what next email, call, or whatever is going to come up, and that frustrates me. But getting back to community now, okay. So we support the things that our employees support. But we're deep in things like Boys and Girls Club. We're deep in after school programs, and I happen to be a Presbyterian, and I do things that are related to the ministries of the Presbyterian Church, and that's just where my heart lies. I give a scholarship at Cal State Fullerton every year to an entrepreneurial student for $3,500, and I've been doing that for 20 years. And I also am a adjunct. Well, I'm not I take that back. I am an entrepreneur in residence, and this is the title they give me so that I don't have to be a professor, but I go into the classroom and I teach, and I do it on a voluntary basis. And it's in the discipline of management called entrepreneurship. And I teach both undergraduate and graduate level, and they're some of the most attended classes at the university. I'm absolutely thrilled about it.
How did you get into that aspect?
Well, they in 2003, I was approached by the university. They had a group of students that were in management and in studying management, and they needed a capstone course. They needed to do a case study on a business, and they asked if my business could be one of them. And I said, well, I have this issue. And they said, okay. So they did this whole study on it, and it was the worst freaking thing I've ever seen in my life. It was terrible. It wasn't well thought out. It didn't connect with the client. There was so much disconnect that you want to talk about a report that was telling. It probably weighed 3 pounds, okay? And I called it a doorstop. And for 7 years, it was used to hold my door open. That's the best value I got out of everything that was there, was the weight of the paper.
Nice.
And instead, and I didn't pull back. They asked my opinion. I told them all right there. And I said, look, I'm not here to protect you and your grade. I'm here to protect my business and the advice that I've paid for. And I don't think I got a very good, I don't think I got anything really valuable. And the professor was gracious and then approached me about 4 weeks later and said, hey, would you be interested in being a mentor in our class so that we can have somebody that could act as that quality control and make sure that the product that the customer ends up getting is worthy? And they've won 11 national titles in competition against Harvard, USC, UCLA, Yale, this little Cal State Fullerton group, whether it's an undergrad group or a grad group, they've been in a top 5 finish for the last 20 years. And I've been a big part of that, just helping to change the scope of it and bringing a level of quality control that really changed. And then look at my clientele. I can see the cases. I know the cases that need to be worked. If they've got a recruiting problem, well, let's get the leadership program working on this problem. And, oh, they've got a financial controls problem. Well, the accounting group can do that one. Or these guys need to understand how to digitally market. So the e-commerce group focus. So there are these different focuses, and it's just fascinating. And I just love going into these businesses and experiencing it. And then, of course, they always learn what I do. And I have to tell you, over the years, a few of those have become clients.
Nice.
That's good, man. I think that's part of the problem, though. You have people that are out there willing to tell everybody what's wrong, but they don't do what they need to do to fix it. And, you know, if you're going to give honest feedback, have a solution too. You know, that's one thing that I was taught early in my career. it's okay to be direct with people and to give them the answer they don't necessarily want to hear. But when you do that, give them the opportunity to have a solution heard at the same time. That's the difference between being a problem solver and being a jerk, in my opinion. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. So listen, we've been going almost an hour. I want to be respectful of your time. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us. But, just going back to the roots of insurance is always refreshing, because so much of what we do at Florida Risk doesn't even focus on the insurance piece. It's all of the other stuff that I forget how much I like talking about, the coverage forms and the endorsements and all of those things too. So thank you for bringing that back, because I think a lot of people can learn from some of the conversation that we had today. People are going to want to reach out to you, Jerry, and I know that you're involved in IAOA and you're on Facebook and in places in the internet. But why don't you tell them how the best way, how you prefer to be reached?
Well, anybody that wants to reach out to me can come to my website, conreyinsurance.com. There's a place, Talk to Jerry. It's there. They can send me an email, jerry@conreyins.com. I always reply and I always respond. And if you need to call me, you can just call me at the office, 877-450-1872, and I'll actually pay for the call. We'll see if I can help. Year end is very difficult for me. Okay, 1/1 is a big day in the world of insurance. Big Daddy Insurance starts on 1/1. It's just the way it is. So for the next 2 weeks, I may not be as accessible as I would often be. Just before coming onto this call, I told my client that I had a podcast to get to, and I had a hard stop at 1:00. And he said, "More important than my renewal?" I said, "No, not more important than my renewal, but we just need to get you done by 12:59. Okay, so let's get it done."
There you go. Well, you're safe, because this won't even hit the airwaves till after the first of the year. So
good.
You don't have to worry about 1/1 getting conflicted. But listen, I just wanted to thank you for your friendship and thank you for coming on. And I look very much forward, if you're able to make it to this side of the country, whether it be for Innovation 21 or not. I've got a glass of good scotch and a fine cigar waiting for you, and I'm ready to sit down and talk more shop with you.
Well,
Thank you.
You're talking my language with that, David. That and your you showed me the other day. You raised my barbecue game. Now I've got to start getting into the David level. And my wife is like, "David level? What are you talking about?" I go, "Let me show you." And so I showed her pictures.
That's funny. Well, listen, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Really appreciate it, and we will talk soon.
Absolutely. One more thing, David. The feeling is actually mutual. I get out to Florida once in a while, and the next time I'm out there, I'm going to come by. But if you're in Orange County or Southern California and you want to come in this direction, I know how to be a pretty fair host, and I've had my share of that. And I'm not too bad with cooking either. So
the one thing I do know after talking to you is that your internet signal's solid, so I'm not going to have to worry about getting any of my messages if I come by.
That's true. Listen, good to see you. Thank you for asking me. I'm honored, and I'm humbled by the whole thing. I love to give sage advice. It's what I really live for. In fact, my marketing team right now is chasing after the TM rights to Insurance Sage. They think that's a good byline for us, and I think that I'm now maybe worthy of such a moniker, but not for any other reason than to just suggest that always know that there's somebody out there that can help you and solve your problem. And what Sage is about an appropriate response to a question. And I always will be appropriate in any question, and I welcome them because it really keeps me going and helps me be relevant. And when somebody asks me a question, it validates that somebody's noticed that all this hard work is actually worthy and paying off. So thank you for your time, and thank you for what you're doing and exposing me to podcasts. And now I got to figure out how to listen to one.
There you go. Well, I'll make sure you have that taken care of. No problem at all. All right, have a great week, my friend.
Thanks, Jerry.
Bye-bye now.
See ya.
You've been listening to the Power Producers Podcast. You can follow Killing Commercial Insurance on Facebook and YouTube. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our book, The Extra 2 Minutes, and our website, killingcommercial.com.